Day 2, it's 9:47 in Italy. It's a foggy day in Venice. The guys have been working for 40 minutes, about 40 minutes already. I'm again with Aaron, which will take us to this tour in programming on live today as well. And yesterday we had some technical problems with the audio, so we saw you guys tweeting a lot and like complaining about it. We hope we have fixed them. And so what happened yesterday and what's going to happen today, Aaron?
Right, so yesterday we really just started on the design, sort of laying out what we wanted to cover. We started breaking down what sort of data we needed to keep track of. And the designers started putting together the user interaction for the application. They have not really started creating the layouts, the mock-ups for the screens yet. We had a team get together and discuss our persistence mechanism. And persistence is how you save data out and read it back in again. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but with something like this where it's networked, a real common mechanism is what's called a web service. And that's just a web application, but instead of accessing it through your web browser, you access it through a program. And in this case, it will be the Wikimedia program. So we are sort of honing in on what that's going to be. There's a couple of different ways that we typically exchange data through a web service. There's XML, there's JSON, and there's binary formats. A lot of people on the Twitter feed were talking about binary formats, and maybe we should go with that. We decided to go with JSON. And one of the reasons why is because if we decide later on to create a client for Android or something like that, the binary format would be very hard to deal with.
Okay.
Whereas if we deal with something that's a more open specification, like JSON or XML, it'll be actually pretty straightforward to then create an Android client as well. So we're going to leave that as JSON. We're dealing with the questions of how do we do caching and fetching of the data. And then later on, we'll be more focusing in on how do we do edits as well. Some of the guys sat down and started writing the classes that represent the data we'll be dealing with. So events and users and user participation, and all of these can be modeled in software. And you can sort of get started with that without knowing much about what the screens are going to look like. But at some point, when you start to worry about, for example, images, it's a big deal to fetch an image over the network. You have to start thinking about how is this class actually going to get used. And we've sort of gotten to that point. So one of the things we'll be pushing on real hard today is getting the designers to get us some mock-ups.
Yes.
So and that'll give us some more focus to go on. It'll also make it so that each of the developers can focus in on one particular screen. Typically on a phone, when you talk about screens, you're actually talking about a controller that goes with that screen, which is called a view controller. And so we'll create a view controller for each different screen, and then we'll divvy those off. So each programmer will get one or two of these screens to create, and the designers will act as sort of mentors to them. So we have 8 developers, only 2 designers. So we'll have every 4 programmers will have 1 designer to help them make it look pretty. So we're getting to that point, and it's nice to get to that point because we'll have more independence, and the programmers can work without getting in each other's way as much.
Did any very original idea come out from the brainstorming? What is the most original?
We like to think all our ideas are totally original.
Come on, I saw this big board with like user and participant. It didn't, I mean, what's
I wouldn't say that any of our ideas
what's going to be
are
special about this
brilliant.
application?
What's going to be special? Anyone? Anybody got something that's particularly special about our application?
Possible login method that we're debating.
We've been debating a passwordless login, and we'll see if that actually makes it to production. So,
Okay.
I think when you're talking about an application that's going to take 7 days, you can't have anything too radical. We can't do. Someone was talking about voice print authentication, where you would talk to it, it would recognize it was you and let you use the application. We can't do anything so radical because we have no idea how long it would take to code that up.
Okay.
And likewise, for the users, you don't want to do anything too radical because you don't want to surprise them. So you want things, the interface to be consistent with what's already there. So as much as possible, we're going to try to stick with the stock buttons and sliders that come from Apple, so that our application looks and acts more like everybody else's apps. So one of the goals really should be not to innovate.
Okay.
I know that sounds silly,
Yeah.
but to take a problem and solve it without innovating is actually a great thing.
Okay. So what is the creativity in it?
What is the creativity?
Where is the creativity in it if you can't innovate?
Making something as simple as possible and no simpler is a creative act.